Walk into your front yard tomorrow morning. Look around. Every plant you see was placed there by a human decision. Yours, the previous owners, a landscaper who came once and never thought about birds for a single second. And here is what almost nobody ever gets told. The birds at your feeder have been silently grading every one of those plants for years. Some pass, most fail. And the ones that failed the hardest are the ones that almost every homeowner has planted with pride, believing they were making the yard more beautiful. Tonight we walk through your yard, one plant at a time, and we look at it through the eyes of the cardinal at your feeder, the chickadee in the hedge, the wren in the shrubs. By the end of this video, you will look at your front yard the way a scientist looks at a dead lake, quiet, pretty, and almost completely empty of life. The first plant we look at is probably the one you are most proud of. Start at the curb. White flowers in spring, glossy leaves in summer, compact symmetrical shape that fits perfectly in a suburban lot. The Bradford pear was the most popular ornamental street tree in America for 40 years. And every single one of them is, from a bird's point of view, a dead tree standing. The Bradford pear is native to China. Scientists who take the time to search these trees for insects don't find much. Entomologist Doug Tallamy found just one caterpillar species on them. One. Meanwhile, native oak trees support over 500 species of caterpillars. And when it takes over 6,000 caterpillars to raise one brood of chickadees, that is a significant difference. The Carolina chickadee you see at your feeder every morning needs between 6,000 and 9,000 caterpillars to raise a single clutch from hatch to fledge. A yard with a Bradford pear and no native trees cannot provide that. The chickadees are not raising broods in your yard. They are flying somewhere else to find what your tree cannot give them. And it gets worse. Bradford pears have escaped cultivation and are now classified as invasive in at least 25 U.S. states, spreading into natural areas and replacing the native trees that actually feed something. The fix, a native eastern redbud or serviceberry. Both flower beautifully in spring. Both feed hundreds of caterpillar species. Both give the birds a reason to stay. Walk to the corner of your house, the shrub with the small leaves and the burgundy color that turns brilliant red in fall. Landscapers love it. Hardy, drought-tolerant, deer-resistant. Birds hate it. Not metaphorically. Researchers documented that Japanese barberry thickets dramatically increase the population density of black-legged ticks, the primary vector of Lyme disease. Dense barberry creates the exact humidity microclimate ticks need to survive winter, while providing perfect cover for the mice that carry the disease. Your decorative shrub is not just useless to birds. It is actively converting your yard into a Lyme disease incubator. The berries look cheerful in winter, but are nutritionally so poor that birds eat them only when nothing else is available. Native alternatives like winterberry holly and spicebush provide dramatically higher nutritional value and zero tick amplification. The fix costs the same as what you already spent. The difference for every ground foraging bird and every person in your yard is not small. The row of roses your neighbor recommended, disease-resistant, continuous bloom, almost zero maintenance. Knockout roses are one of the most commercially successful ornamental plants in modern history. And here is what the nursery did not mention. Knockout roses are bred for double and triple flower forms. Petals stacked so densely that the reproductive structures of the flower are physically inaccessible to most pollinators. A bee cannot reach the center. A hummingbird cannot extract nectar. The plant produces beautiful continuous color and feeds nobody. Add to this the systemic pesticide treatments most commercial roses are sold pre-treated with, neonicotinoids in particular, and you have a row of plants that not only fails to support pollinators, but actively poisons the ones that try. Many non-native species are as distasteful or toxic to North American insects. And insects, especially caterpillars, are how plants turn into food for other animals, especially birds. The flower border you spent hundreds of dollars on is the longest dead zone on your property. A native wild columbine or coneflower planted in the same space feeds hummingbirds, supports 30 caterpillar species, and costs half the price. The clean green hedges along your foundation, trimmed into perfect rectangles. The shrub that says this is a well-maintained home. Boxwoods are native to Europe and parts of Asia. They support zero native North American insect species in any meaningful population. They produce no berries. They cannot host nests in any practical way. The species that nest in dense, low shrubs will not nest in plants their evolutionary system does not recognize. And the worst part is what the boxwood replaced. Most boxwood hedges in American yards were planted in spaces that used to hold native inkberry holly, bayberry, or viburnum. Every one of those native shrubs supports nesting birds, produces berries that feed migrants, and hosts the caterpillars that fledglings need. The neat green rectangle in front of your foundation is the easiest replacement on this entire list. The moment you replace it, your yard can go from one nesting site to 4 within a single growing season. Step back. Look at the thing that takes up 60 to 90% of most American front yards. Kentucky bluegrass, despite the name, is native to Europe and Northern Asia. North America has lost more than 3 billion breeding birds since 1970, a loss researchers tie to habitat conversion, pesticides, and on residential landscapes, what we choose to plant. The American lawn is the largest contributor to that choice. 86% of the country is privately owned, so when you create landscapes out of introduced Bradford pear and non-native grass, there are almost no caterpillars. The cardinal at your feeder does not land on your lawn for any reason except the spilled seed below the feeder. The robin hunting your lawn finds a fraction of the worms it would find in a yard with native ground cover. Your lawn requires more water, more fertilizer, more pesticides, and more carbon-emitting maintenance than any other plant in your yard, and produces nothing a bird can eat, nest in, or depend on. Replace even a 10-foot strip of lawn with native warm-season grasses and wildflowers. What happens in the first growing season will surprise you. Look down at the dark mulch under your shrubs. Black or dark brown, freshly applied every spring from the landscape supply company. The dye is typically iron oxide or carbon black, not toxic in itself. The problem is what it is dyed onto. Most commercial dyed mulch is recycled wood waste from construction sites, pallets, demolition debris, and shipping crates. It can contain treated lumber residues, chromated copper arsenate, creosote, formaldehyde. When you spread it under your shrubs, you are spreading industrial waste into the soil, where every ground-feeding fledgling in your yard will be foraging in 2 months. Beyond contamination, the dense mulch layer suppresses the leaf litter ecosystem that ground-feeding birds depend on entirely. Bare soil and natural leaf fall host insects, larvae, invertebrates. 6 inches of dyed wood chips host almost nothing. Switch to natural undyed hardwood mulch in moderate layers. Better, leave the leaves where they fall. The towhees and thrashers and white-throated sparrows will find your yard within a single season. The back of your yard, the wall, the tree trunks. English ivy climbing everything, covering everything, looking lush. It looks like wildlife habitat. It is the opposite. English ivy is classified as a noxious invasive in at least 18 U.S. states. It produces berries that birds eat and disperse, which is exactly how it spreads across the continent. The berries are nutritionally poor and contain compounds that cause gastrointestinal distress in many species. And the ivy covering your trees is slowly killing them, blocking sunlight from the bark, holding moisture against the trunk, accelerating fungal infection. A mature oak with heavy ivy coverage is being killed slowly. The same oak, cleared of ivy, could support over 500 caterpillar species for the next century. English ivy is a plant that looks like habitat and is actually a slow-motion ecological collapse happening on the side of your house. Remove it. The tree underneath will recover. The birds will return within months. Here is what this walk through your yard actually revealed. Managed landscapes in which non-native ornamental plants are favored over native vegetation now dominate the United States, particularly east of the Mississippi River. Every Bradford pear, every barberry, every boxwood hedge was a decision made by someone who cared about how the yard looked, and never once asked whether the birds at the feeder could survive what was being installed. The result is what researchers now call a landscape of biological silence. Green, maintained, beautiful from the street, and almost completely empty of the insect life that the birds you love depend on to raise their young. Most of the vegetation in suburban areas is introduced, and thus had one caterpillar or less. But in native trees like oaks, researchers found scores of larvae, often 20 or more in the space of 5 minutes. You now know which decisions to change first. If this changed how you see the plants in your yard, subscribe right now, because every week on this channel, we go this deep into what birds actually need to survive in the landscapes we build. Tell me in the comments, which one of these 7 is in your yard right now? And which one are you replacing first? I read every single one. And share this with someone who just bought a Bradford pear, because this is the video they needed before they planted it.